Hello friends and cinema lovers. I am writer-director C.S.Nag for Indian Renaissance. And in today's third and final episode called Decoding Indian Cinema, I am going to discuss how we can deconstruct and demystify Indian cinema for the benefit of millions of cinema goers. As we have seen in our first two episodes, starting with Phalke's Raja Harishchandra in 1913, during the last century, Indian cinema has become an integral part of India's cultural identity. For 60 years until the 1970s, when television first made its entry into India, cinema was the only audiovisual instrument of mass communication. 3 generations of Indians grew up under its powerful influence. The secular spirit of tolerance and national integration kept the country strong and united even during 4 wars against our neighbors in 47, 62, 65 and 71. For the next 20 years, there was only one government-owned radio and TV channel which had a monopoly. It's only now, in the age of media proliferation and manipulation, which has bred the schismatic culture of double speak and double think, that even minor conflicts like Kargil, Balakot, Doklam and Galwan has created such discord and unrest throughout the country because of petty and partisan politics. Our country has always been a pluralistic society with multiple religions, ethnicities, linguistic groups and political ideologies. It is only now in the Coke and Pepsi era of the last 30 years that we are being pulled apart by the forces of sectarianism and polarization. Their divisive agenda, by instigating communal, regional and caste and even gender conflict, has been exposed. In their mad lust to seize power and obtain the loot license, they have made Bollywood their golden goose, which they are hell-bent on killing for its golden eggs. The oil-rich media, in this case, has become Aladdin's lamp, and the sponsors and advertisers, the genie who controls its light. We have seen how foreign markets and funding have unleashed such insane levels of greed, corruption and nepotism that Bollywood has come to resemble the fable of Ali Baba and 40 Thieves. A new underclass of crooks and gangsters linked to drug warlords have found a safe haven to use it as a tool for spreading global anarchism and terrorism. These culture vultures have made cinema an opiate for the hungry and huddled masses. They have made heroes out of clones and celebrities out of mediocrities. It is no wonder that in India today there are as many gods and divinities and icons as crooks and criminals operating in their name. They have even made gods out of politicians, cricketers and film stars. Unless you are a darling of Big Brother or a Big Mother, you have no way out of oblivion. You are doomed to waste your life chasing shadows and phantoms in the dark. The fate of society has become like the blind leading the blind. In the age of paid news and fake news, TV means tunnel vision. Like the three blind men and the elephant, they are so lost in the details that they always miss the big picture. Everyone has become an expert with an agenda. Even if they have nothing to say, they want to say it anyway. I speak, therefore I am has become the motto. There are as many views and opinions about cinema as there are speakers. Producers and financiers consider it a tempting and lucrative business. Distributors are seduced by the prospects of big hits and scared by fears of flops. The actors and actresses only dream of name and fame. The director, writer, cinematographer, and editor glorify it as an art. The government only sees it as a rich source of taxes and revenues. The vast masses throng to it as a cheap pastime and escapist entertainment. There is something in it for everyone. There is a voyeur, a peeping Tom in all of us. A craving and curiosity to pry into other people's secrets or discover the truth. A hunger to carry tales and gossip about others. To live in a surrogate reality. That's what makes storytellers and actors so popular. In ancient times, they had the status of prophets and oracles. That's how theatre evolved as a magic show, sacred rite, and ceremonial ritual. A social discourse in which the audience was held spellbound by a participation mystique in which it lost itself. In spurning what was once sacred, we are chasing chaos instead of order, without realizing they are not distinct and separate states, but dynamic and transitory, much like the paradox of being and non-being. Freedom without responsibility can easily lead to a disorder in which nothing is valuable because everything is permissible. Instinct has to be tempered with insight to arrive at an art that feels and moves others. The ancient roots of Indian cinema go back to Vedic theatre. The earliest evidence of Indian theatre goes back to 4000 BC in the Rig Veda, which describes it being performed during yajna or sacrifices, which were presented as a drama with actors and dialogues set to music. The dialogues range from a monologue to a dialogue between Indra, Indrani, and Vrishkrapi. Surprisingly, the dialogues were not restricted to gods and divinities, but also one about a gambler whose habits ruin his life, estranging him from his wife and parents. The famous scholar Panini has recorded a dramatic text, Natya Shastra and Natya Sutra, written in 500 BC by two dramatists, Shilalin and Krishnashva. Patanjali also recalls the names of plays called Kem Savadha and Bali Bandha, dating back to 300 BC, in which era the Khandgiri caves are the earliest examples of theatre architecture in India. But by far, the most authoritative text of early Sanskrit theatre is Bharat Muni's Natya Shastra, dating back to 400 BC. The text contains 36 chapters with a total of 6,000 poetic verses. The treatise is the most complete work of dramaturgy in the ancient world. It deals with acting, dance, music, dramaturgy, music scales, art direction, architecture, costuming, makeup, props, organizing companies, audiences, and competitions. It is clear that theatre was practiced as a sacred ritual by priestly clans skilled in dance, music, and recitation, which passed from generation to generation. The purpose of theatre was to educate and entertain. The main characters were the Nayaka or hero, the Nayika, the heroine, and the Vidushaka or clown. In the era of royal courts, there emerged the role of a Sutradhar or stage manager who also acted as a narrator. The actors were rigorously trained in vocal and physical techniques. Special emphasis was given to 64 mudras or postures and gestures. There were no prohibitions against females. The treatise describes Abhinay or acting to be of two styles, Lokadharmi or realistic and Natyadharmi or conventional. The Natya Shastra is famous for its rasa theory, which asserts that the primary goal of performance art is to transport the audience into a parallel reality to experience his own consciousness and spirituality. This Anand or bliss was innate and intrinsic to every human being. It led to a state of siddhi or rapture shared by the performer and his audience. Rasa is created through a creative synthesis and expression of vibhava or determinants, anubhava, which is consequence, and vyabhicharbhava, which is transitory states. The text outlined 8 rasas or sentiments like the tragic, the comic, heroic, erotic, pathetic, furious, odious, horrific, and ecstatic. The text included 3 arts of vadya or musical instrument, Gita, which is song, and Nritta, which is dance. The singing was in 2 forms, Gandharva, which is ceremonial music, and Gana, which is improvised music. A more elaborate version on acting, Abhinav Bharati, was developed from it in the 10th century later. A striking feature of the Natya Shastra is the composition of its 6,000 shlokas or verses in precise Anushtabd matras or exactly 32 syllables. Some of the prose sections are composed in Arya Matra. The text stated that the playwright should know all the bhavas or inner emotions of all characters in the story so as to connect the audience with them. The hero's quest was trying to achieve the 4 goals of human life in Hindu philosophy, so that the vastu or plot emerges through depiction of the 3 worlds of the divine, the human, and the demonic. Dramas were made up of dharma, which is ethic, artha, which is relevance, kama, which is passion, vyang, which is humor, and yudh, which is battle. All these virtues worked together to provide joy to those wanting to be happy, solace to those in grief, calmness to those in worry, energy to the restless, courage to the coward, eroticism to the lowlorn, fulfillment to the wealthy, knowledge to the ignorant, wisdom to the educated, so that they could all enjoy anand or bliss. Just as the taste of food is created by a combination of meat and vegetables, spices, salt, and sugar, the audience tasted a drama through words, gestures, and emotions. Love, humor, sorrow, anger, passion, terror, disgust, and shock were all part of 33 psychological states which are transitory. The actor and his audience were involved in an intimate discourse through every word, gesture, effect of makeup, costume, props, set design, and lighting used in the drama. During the 10th century, all Hindu temples were designed to include stages for performance, arts, and prayer halls as described in the Natya Shastra. In addition to all the Vedic songs in its liturgy, the text devotes 130 verses to 7 types of non-Vedic songs like the Mandraka, Aparantaka, Rovindaka, Prakari, Ullopayaka, Ovedaka, and Uttara. Each octave was broken into 22 units of melodic scale called Shrutis, which predates the Greek interval. The gramas or scales and murchanas or boards and tanas, notes, and swaras, which are tones, are also similar. It also describes 33 melodic alankars or intonations in songs. Without them, the text says, the song becomes like a night without the moon, a river without current, a creeper without flower, a woman without ornament. A song was described to have 4 varnas or tone patterns of ascending line, descending line, steady line, and quavering line. A great song with all these virtues could induce a trance-like state of siddhi or ecstatic bliss, and thus this aspect became the goal of all the great Sufi and Vedic poet saints of India like Guru Nanak, Kabir, Bhule Shah, Mirabai, and Baba Farid, to say a few, in the great secular tradition of the Bhakti movement that swept across India from the 8th to 15th centuries. The Natya Shastra also laid down the building blocks of Indian dance tradition with the creation of 108 Karanas or basic dance units. Each Karana was a specific combination of the hands and feet integrated with body, posture and movement, known as Sthan and Chari. This was in turn associated with various mudras or body postures and gestures, and bhavas or emotions conveyed through face and eye expressions. The Vedic tradition of all the arts, be they drama, music or dance, was to understand the 3 gunas of sattva, which is virtue, rajas, which is passion, and tamas, which is gross, as human life was seen as an interplay of all 3. The experience of Anand or ecstasy, moksha, bliss, and siddhi, transcendence, which was the goal of life, could only be achieved if these 3 were in balance or harmony. As such, the Natya Shastra was part of the same Vedic tradition as in the yoga school of Hindu philosophy, using its concepts and techniques like asanas, pranayam, and dhyan for training of actors and expression of culture to bring about higher levels of consciousness among the audience and society. By the 4th century, in the era of India's greatest playwright of Kalidas, professional companies under the patronage of royal courts, directed by a Sutradhar manager who also acted as a narrator, flourished. Kalidas was inspired to write his greatest play, Shakuntala, which was in turn inspired from a story from Mahabharata and became a world heritage after being translated into English and German. It was greatly admired by top intellectuals of the European Enlightenment and even influenced Goethe's Faust. Bhavabhuti in the 7th century was also renowned for his plays based on the Ramayana epic. Even the great Emperor Harsha wrote 3 plays, including a Buddhist Nagananda. In the Mughal era, Indian drama came under Persian influence in the 13th century. But Bharat Natya Shastra ensured that Sanskrit theatre held its own. Bhakti poetry also became popular. Later, during the British rule in the 19th century, a modern national theatre began in Kolkata with Neel Darpan, the first commercial production in 1872. Tagore championed the nationalist movement and wrote plays promoting freedom, spiritualism, and Bengali identity. Badal Sarkar, Shambhu Mitra, and Utpal Dutt popularized experimental theatre, and Baul folk music became popular. Kalyanam Raghuramaiah was a pioneer of Telugu theatre and is credited with giving 20,000 performances in 60 years and was honored by the Padma Shri and C.S.Nag awards. Vishnu Das Bhave founded Marathi theatre with Sita Swayamvar in 1843, and the Sangeet Natak or musical theatre began with Trilokekar's Nala Damayanti in 1879. Adda Sahib Kirloskar's musical Shakuntal, based on Kalidasa's play in 1880, came with 209 classical songs and ushered in a golden age as rich in tradition as Italian opera with singers like Bal Gandharv. Kirloskar's disciple Dinanath Mangeshkar made a name in theatre and films along with Master Vinayak and Bhaji Bhendarkar. Khadilkar's Kichak Vadh mocked British Viceroy Curzon as the evil Kichak who tried to dishonor Draupadi in Mahabharata and was banned by the British. Dinanath's nephew Jitendra Abhisheki took Marathi Sangeet Natak to new heights, teaming up with great singers like Bhimsen Joshi, Vasantrao Deshpande, and Ramdas Kamath. Mangeshkar's children, Lata, Asha, Meena, Usha, and Hridaynath, have kept Dinanath's tradition alive to this day. P.K. Atre, Pula Deshpande, Vijay Tendulkar, Mahesh Elkunswar, and Satish Alekar broke new ground in comedy, farce, political protest, and absurdist theatre. Hindi theatre built on the great tradition of Munshi Premchand with the formation of National School of Drama and Indian People's Theatre. Stalwarts like Ibrahim Al-Qazi, Habib Tanveer, Prithviraj Kapoor, Balraj Sani, and Bhisham Sani, Dharamveer Bharti, Mohan Rakesh, and Nadira Babbar gave it a modern context and a secular and socialist spirit which influenced Hindi cinema. Kannada theatre played an important role in reviving folk theatre forms like Yakshagan, Bayalata, Sannata, and Tala Maddale. Stalwarts like Varadachar, Shivarama, and B.V. Karanth, Girish Karnad, Anant and Shankar Nag mixed tradition with modernity. Gujarati musical theatre Bhavai became popular, and Ranchod Dave, K.M. Munshi, C.C. Mehta, and Dina Pathak, etc. brought a social context. Adi Marzban and Barjor Patel made Parsi Gujarati theatre a laugh riot with parody, which Paresh Rawat is still trying to do in Hindi cinema. Punjabi cinema began in Lahore with G.K. Mehta's silent film Daughters of Today in 1928, and his assistant A.R. Kardar followed with Husn Ka Daku and Heer Ranja with the first sound film in 1932. Noor Jahan's success brought other stars like Shanta Apte, Motilal, Hira Lal, and Pran to Lahore. B.R. Chopra, Rabaran Sagar, and Syed Hashmi all started their careers as film reporters. Partition brought K.L. Sehgal, Prithviraj, Dilip Kumar, Mohammad Rafi, and Shamshad Begum to Bombay to work in Hindi cinema, and they achieved success on a scale they could never dream of in Lahore. in Punjabi cinema. The success of Dadak Naam Jahaz Hai revived Punjabi cinema in the 1970s, and big stars like Sunil Dutt, Dara Singh, Dharmender, Rajendra Kumar and Firoz Khan tried to cash in. In the Pepsi era, Punjabi became a brand value, and as many as 61 films were made in 2019, with the title song from Long Lachi reaching 1 billion views on YouTube. Harry Babeja's Char Sahibzade is the highest grossing film, raking in 70 crores, which is a pale shadow of the Hindi film market. To decode Indian cinema, finally, is something of a Herculean task. The glorious heritage of Vedic culture in Indian theatre, which was diluted over 5 millennia under Greek, Persian, Mughal and British colonial subjugation, was all but extinguished by the advent of cinema. Bollywood, as we have seen, is the most perverse example of it. Western scholars, ignorant of our Vedic culture, like the 3 blind men and the elephant, have tried to put a scholarly spin on it. Their lofty arguments can be summed up in 3 schools of thought. The first is the indigenous transmission theory, which holds a view that Hindi cinema appears to be the most powerful cultural product based on non-Western aesthetic principles presently alive. The second is the cultural assimilation theory, which is put forward by the secularists, and which argues that Indian cinema is a synthesis of Indo-Turkic culture, and the difference between Hindi and Western cinema is like that between an epic and a short story. Hybridization theory, put forth by NRI apologists of the so-called Indian diaspora, have coined the term localization, which they say describes the appropriation of Western popular culture by Bollywood as a result of cheap imitation, plagiarism and alienation from the Indian mainstream. The fetishization of tradition, as some have called what Bollywood has done to our rich and ancient heritage, has reached a point of mockery that can be no longer tolerated. Equally, the claim that all popular culture is based on epic archetypes or rustic traditions of Indian psyche ignores the major achievements of directors like Satyajit Ray, Mridal Sen, Ritvik Ghatak, Badal Sarkar, Bibal Roy, Guru Dutt, Shyam Benegal, Girish Karnad, Adur Gopalakrishnan and Aravindan, to name a few. Some scholars have taken a dialectical approach and have even used Marxist and Freudian models to deconstruct Indian cinema with a doctrinaire approach which may sound very intellectual but has little, if any, practical value. These can be summed up as cultural, historical, technological, psychological, mythical, and political economic approaches. To misrepresent and deride our Vedic heritage by degrading its darshana schools of philosophy as idolatry and visual platonic communion of sexually repressed sacrificial cults betrays their own sordid history. The most practical approach would be to enumerate all the varied traditions from ancient to modern that have shaped and influenced Indian theatre and its cinema offspring over the course of 6 millennia. By this reckoning, we can broadly categorize Indian cinema as a composite of 8 different stylistic genres that had their epochs and eras of dominance over the public imagination and are still resonate in the hearts and minds of audiences. These 8 stylistic trends can be summed up as number one, mythological cinema drawn from ancient Hindu and Persian myths like the Ramayana, Mahabharata, and Sufi epics of Firdaus, Hafiz, and Rumi, like Mesnavi, etc., which had the impact of divine revolution. Second, romantic cinema based on classical and popular folk traditions like Kalidasa's Shakuntala, Nala Damayanti, Shirin Farhad, Heer Ranjha, Laila Majnu, Soni Mahiwal, Reshma Shera, and the like. Number three, musical cinema based on classical and folk traditions like Sangeet Natak, Yakshagan, Kathakali, Kodiyattam, Bhavai, and Baul, etc., down to Nautanki and Tamasha. Number four, epic and progressive cinema based on neorealism and nationalism promoted by IPTA, LSD, NFDC, and the Film Society movement. Number five, historical cinema or biopics of some of the greatest Indian leaders like Shivaji Maharaj, Maharana Pratap, Rani of Jhansi, Taraji, Akbar, Nanak, Kabir, Vivekanand, and Gandhi, etc. Number six, children's cinema exploring the world of imagination for the young, including animated films and those made by the CFS. Number seven, political and even women's cinema dealing with political themes, gender and women's issues. And lastly, number eight, avant-garde and experimental cinema using non-linear or even multiple contrapuntal parallel narrative structures, as has been done in the work by great masters like Ritvik Ghatak, Mrinal Sen, Mani Kaul, Saeed Mirza, and Kumar Shahani. The idea of some Indian cultural theorists like Dr. Kapila Vatsyayan that while Western theatre is plot-driven, Indian theatre is more ras or emotion-driven and needs a familiarity with rasa aesthetics may be more pertinent. It may well be the magic formula to explain how this complex mosaic of our national identity comes together despite all the pulls and pressures to disintegrate and self-destruct. It is quite clear that the Vedic fear of our culture degrading in stages over the four yugas or epochs, from Sat Yug to Tret Yug and Dwapar to the sorry spectacle that we see it limping on one leg in Kali Yug is prophetic. It is amazing that Bharat Muni could foresee this coming 6,000 years ago and even wrote a beautiful myth about it in the final chapters of his Natya Shastra. According to the myth, alarmed by the perilous state of Hindu culture in Kali Yuga, the gods complained to the creator god Brahma to take some corrective action. Brahma obliged them by using his infinite wisdom to distill the essence of all the four Vedas into a fifth, which he called the Natya Veda, to be made accessible to all ranks of society. He then taught this Veda or Natya Shastra to his disciple, the sage Bharat Muni, who in turn taught it to all his 100 sons, who performed this new theatre, assisted by Apsaras, the heavenly beauties, who assumed the feminine roles as the dream play unfolded on a celestial stage to the delight of all the gods and mortals alike. Given the dismal state of Bollywood and the rest of our cultural institutions in the Coke Pepsi age of decadence and corruption, it may seem to be a daunting Herculean task, like cleaning the Asian stables, to embark on the quest of bringing about a renaissance of the Hindi film industry, or Bollywood as it is called. But as we have explained in these 3 episodes, the passion for art is like the mighty rivers of all the cultures that are unstoppable and burst through all the barriers to flow freely into the ocean of universality beyond the seas of illusion. And that is what, friends and cinema lovers, we have to build on to make this dream of the Indian Renaissance into a reality by joining hands and working together. Namaste and Jai Hind.